Hi, I'm Justin Spring from Soul Speak. I wanted to say a few words to you about the video you're about to see. It's a selection from an interview I had with Patricia Caswell, who's the Executive Director of the Sarasota County Arts Council. We discussed a number of things on that program that I thought might be of interest to you, especially the Soul Speak programs that we're currently doing with everyday people. You know, it's the mission of Soul Speak as a nonprofit to bring poetry into the lives, the everyday lives of everyday people. And I think that our discussion of the various programs that we have will be of interest to you. If you're a lover of poetry, or if you're a lover of self-expression, which is what poetry is all about. There are also some selections from some prize-winning poetry videos that we've done recently I thought you'd like to see. So all in all, I think the interview is something that you're going to enjoy. If you see anything that you like, either in the videos or in the discussion of the programs that we're doing, please feel free to contact me at www.soulspeak.org. I'd like to hear from you. I hope you enjoy the video.
Poetry in a new form in Sarasota. Stay tuned.
From the Comcast Cable Television Studios in Sarasota, this is Sarasota Today, an in-depth forum highlighting today's issues, current events, and people that affect our lifestyle in Sarasota County. For Sarasota Arts Today, here's your host, Patricia Caswell.
Hey, I'm Patricia Caswell. In my day job, I'm the Executive Director of the Sarasota County Arts Council. But one of the fun parts of my job is to get to talk to the most interesting people in Sarasota in the arts, and I have one of them right here with me, Justin Spring of Soul Speak. It's a poetry group, and Justin is a poet.
A poet.
And you're taking poetry to a new and different form, and we want to hear about it. What are you doing with poetry? How do you make poetry new? It's very old.
Well, in fact, the thing that we did is we made a form that is a kind of technical version of what poetry was 40,000 years ago, where people used masks and then they painted their bodies and there were many people speaking at once and chanting and moving. We can't do that anymore. It would be hard for us to do.
Because you can't get the people, or?
I think we're too conscious of ourselves. That's a very unconscious poetry to move to. It's a very spiritual poetry. It's almost close to prayer. But we felt that we could bring in all those things through sound and through pictures. So the thing that we've done is we've taken a poem, let's just say in case of a written poem, and we've created a narrative for it that's a picture or some kind of animation or little artwork, okay? Then we've also kind of overlaid it with music and an oral poem on top of it. So it's many levels of things going on at once.
And we will get to see one in a little while.
Okay, great.
And so how does that, so in other words, you bring in the visual and the movement that was in ancient poetry that is no longer there because people are too inhibited to do that now. But it still evokes the same in the
We're participants now by looking. We've changed our nature. We're not in the art anymore. We're looking from the outside.
It's kind of sad.
It is sad. I wish people would do more poetry, but it's a way to bring them in. You know, I found, surprisingly, that since we started to make videos about a year ago, that people are starting to get what we're doing as poets, which is a multi-voiced singing musical poem. People aren't used to listening and relaxing and just listening with their ears. They have to see something. It helps immensely. And that person has to, that I had so many people, you come to me and say, you know, I really got that poem. That's because they're able to see a layer that allowed them to crawl into it, you know?
You know, I'm remembering something La Musica, chamber music, did. They had some very, very contemporary music, and that when they set it to film, people listened and liked it ever so much more, where they probably may have walked out if they hadn't have watched something.
Right. The art of listening, which we can see happened before, well, let me go back about 3,000 years to the age of Homer, where his poems would
When
take...
you were a kid.
When I was a kid, right? You were right behind me, if I remember.
I deserve that. Keep going.
I was stretching right back there. But his poems took 3 days to recite. So you had to be a listener. You had to be a listener, you see. And people don't have that patience anymore, or that talent.
But the time.
Or the time,
yeah.
right?
We're used to 30 seconds.
30 seconds fast. So you have to get it over fast, and you have to get it visually. You have to get an entrance through the eyes. We were very eye.
Do you think our brains are moving faster too, just catching all this information, like 30,000 bits of information every
I think
hour?
you see in the young people are doing 3 or 4 things at once, which I've always done as a kid, even as a... I like to have 4 or 5 things just going in my head at once. They just seem to take that place. That's in fact the nature of our poetry that we do, is 3 or 4 or 5 things going on at once. So I like that. Most people don't like it. People who are musicians like it. It's like a fugue with very kind of leitmotifs going in and out, you know. But people who are used to looking at print, they want one thing to happen after the other. They're kind of upset by it. They don't know how to adjust to it.
Do you think it could be a generational thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think if you go back 2 or 3 generations, they're absolutely puzzled by what kids are doing today in terms of how many things at once they're doing.
Are they puzzled by the Soul Speak video?
Usually. They want it to slow down, or there's too many things going. There's 2 voices talking. I can only hear one. That's a real generational thing. It's a kind of window that they've made for themselves on how to accept things in. But at the same time, that same woman or man probably has some grandkids who are running around the house, 3 or 4, all talking at once. They understand it. Just that poetry isn't supposed to be that way. See what I mean?
It's not conventional.
So it's
now,
a
I
window.
wonder if we should just go ahead and you should introduce one so we see what you're talking about.
Imagine you're driving late at night.
I'm looking at you in the mirror.
Along a high coastal road.
I can see you.
Somewhere in northern Ethiopia.
I can talk to you.
There are 3 or 4 others with you in the car.
I can't feel you.
Staring out the window at their own reflections in the dark.
I want to touch you.
Off in the distance,
I turn out the lights.
a huge bloom of heat lightning.
I can see your eyes.
Illuminates the troubled sky.
Touch me.
Suddenly, every blood cell in your body races to your face and throat.
Touch me with your eyes.
As if you're racing toward the greatest moment of your life.
Walk out of the mirror.
And then you realize you're about to die.
Stand beside me.
You try to say something
Take my hand.
to the others. But nobody seems to care.
Take my hand.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
Take my hand.
Not anymore.
Justin, that was unique. One more minute before the break. Tell me a little bit about that video.
That video has several windows into it. You know, poetry today has become a lost art. People don't read it anymore. They don't care about it. And part of the reason is that we're used to watching television now or just listening to music. People don't read as much anymore. This affords several windows into poetry. There's a visual window, which is the story that's being told, the artwork. There's a musical window, which is the music. There's a performance window, which is the spoken poem. And there's also the written poem for those people who like that window into poetry, who still have that window into poetry.
So whatever your thing is that your brain gravitates to,
go towards that, and that'll lead you to the others. That's the main entrance for you. Don't worry about the others. They'll eventually follow in.
So in our next video that we watch, we might ask our viewers to look at it and determine which window are you looking through: verbal, visual,
performance, whatever.
And now we have a window into a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
The best window there is. Popular ones, isn't it? It's a huge gap.
Here we go. And we are back. Now, some of the work that you do in the community, first of all, I want to ask you about your mission. I think it's such a cool mission to bring poetry into the everyday lives of everyday people.
Right. I feel about that deeply, by the way. Although I was brought up differently, to think it was an Ivy League kind of just for intellectuals
or
and all
Ivy
that
Tower.
Ivory Tower kind of stuff. But in fact, I've changed my mind completely over the years.
Yeah, it's
a human
people.
art. It's for everybody should be doing a poem once in a
And
while.
so there are some ways that you get everybody involved, including people at hospice.
We work with people of all kinds who have a need to express themselves but can't do it. That's one thing that's happened to us today. We've become very closed. People in grief, real grief, often don't know how to express it. We've kind of lost the institutions and ways of doing it. SoulSpeak allows them to do that in groups. We've been very successful. We've been working now for about 5 months at hospice here in Southwest Florida, a very advanced nonprofit. I mean, they're very good. Yeah. And we've had incredible results because SoulSpeak kind of, it just makes the poem, it just comes to you and you speak it just as though you were a real poet. It just comes right out of you, you know? So here in the case where they're locked in grief, those poems of grieving come out. And it's a way of honoring the dead, you know, and you're standing up to death if you can, you know? So we've had wonderful results. So do they get
to keep a record of their poem then?
Right, in fact, all the poems that they make, in fact, we record every one of them, so they have an album when they leave. They have a written album, too, if they want to write them down. And in fact, we advise them to play them all the time because it's like bringing flowers to the grave of the dead, but these are flowers of the heart, you know? And they're always done with some other member of the hospice there who is also in grief. So it's a wonderful partner to have. People are so alone. When their partner dies after many years, people had soulmates, they're completely lost. So just the ability to speak with somebody else in the same situation spontaneously from the heart is wonderful. So we've been trying to do that for many years until finally, then in fact we sat down with the hospice and said, your people should be doing this. And we explained why, and some people knew of us by that time.
Are they a little too inhibited to do that?
No, because how we start out in the hospice is say that you're a grieving person. Then, in fact, I ask you for some words, which you're going to give me.
I'm a grieving person. I'm always grieving something. I'm sorry. Keep going.
And then I just say, just repeat after me. And somehow the SoulSpeak process is a little psychic. I can't really explain it. But if you give me words, they're like the mountaintops of your island of grieving. You know, don't really show the valleys or anything. And somehow we've learned to take them in, and I'll just give a poem back to you. And the poem will be my poem, but also your poem. So I do your first poem of grieving for you, and you do it by repeating what I say in that same speaker-responder fashion. So we bring people right into it immediately, and their bodies kind of reawaken to it. There's nothing up here you have to learn. You just have to know where to go. It's like prayer. You have to know where to go. Right. And in fact, we've lost that over the thousands of years. If you go back 20,000 years, or in fact, if you go to Africa today, and some of the deeper parts of Africa, or the deeper parts in the beginning, people know how to get to that place. That's when they paint their faces and start to move around in circles and start to speak to the gods, you know. We've forgotten that. We don't know how to do that anymore, but it's in us. So that's what we do. We just reawaken it, and they know it. Wow. And then you start to do it after that.
That is wonderful.
4 sessions. Yeah.
I wonder if we have time for another one. Now, we've been talking about grieving, so we might need a little levity. So the next one, introduce the next video.
In the nighttime, you can't see the shadow man, but in the daytime, you get to your house. know. They're always hanging around, you know. In the nighttime, you can't see the shadow man, but in the daytime, you get to your house, you know. You try every door you can. Every door.
Even inside your head.
They're always reaching out to touch you. The shadow man, he really stretches us sometimes, you know. They really do.
You look at him, the big head.
Shadow man, you're not really just a man, you know.
Watch out.
You keep changing the shape on you. You think you can control, you know, you think you know who you are. Deep down, you know, but you don't, baby. It's always changing on you, you know. Always changing on you. You better believe it, that it is you.
Not that one, huh?
That was very funny.
Nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fun. Well, after love comes pregnancy, and you've
Exactly.
been
Good.
You've also been dealing with some pregnant moms. And tell me about this. This is fascinating.
We started about a year and a half ago. It suddenly came to me that if there's anything that people should be doing with their babies in the womb is speaking poems to them. Not reading a poem, somebody else's poem, but speaking from the bottom of your heart to your baby. Because the baby gets that light, that transcendent light that comes through you, that little shiver. So we started to work with young moms, and we're now working with a whole number of midwives. And what we do is we teach them how to do soul speak and to speak to their babies. With the end result is not only to make the baby more comfortable in the womb and to get their first taste of the arts in the womb. So when they come out walking, they're ready for the arts.
As the Arts Council Director, I love it.
you soldiers of the arts coming out. But what happens is the child picks it up when they start to speak, because the mom keeps doing soul speak once a week, maybe every couple of days I do one. And then pretty soon the baby starts to speak back. And what you have then is you have a way of mother and child going to a deep level of communication where they can really express how they feel to each other. It's fun to do, like all art is fun to do on a divine level, you know. And they take a break from their normal screaming at each other and yelling when they're 15 and 16. Let's do a soul speak poem. And the child knows how to do it. It's like brushing their teeth. Sometimes in my dreams I do one with the mom, and the mom does one back. So we're looking forward to seeing in Sarasota a whole little tribe of little children coming out ready to do poetry, having heard it in the womb, starting to do it with their mothers, and then just continuing through life that way. It's beautiful.
That'd be a great grant for a longitudinal study, a 20-year study.
We're going to try to get some money to do that.
You have to come back from the grave.
I'll be an old guy.
Right.
10 years would be good enough for me. If they're doing it at age 10, I'll be happy.
Yeah, but when they really, it's age 13.
Through 17 is when they really...
That's the test.
Right, that's the test. That's the test is right.
And I think that would be great. As the mother of a 13-year-old, can you hurry up?
Right, you know, believe me.
Really, really neat
It's so obvious, isn't it? But
Yeah.
in fact, we hadn't got to that point in our own thinking. You know, we're still thinking old ways. The new way is just do poems all of the time. Do them to your baby.
Is there anybody else that you know of doing this kind of stuff in the United States or in the world?
A lot of people play music for their babies. They sing to their babies.
No, I mean just the soul speak idea. In general,
probably I would say in terms of the closest one are the very good rappers who are also poets, but in fact you don't see those on TV. That's a new way of speaking, it's a new kind of rhythmical speech, but they're not really doing it.
It's harder edged.
It's harder edged, it's from the mind rather than the heart.
Right.
You see, it's a little bit different. Somewhere, someplace, there are people doing soul speak because it's something that will come to you. It came to us, we don't know how. We weren't aiming on, we were just trying to make our performances better. and we tried to rediscover how people in ancient times just spoke their poems, and we eventually
Did you kind of do
out
that research?
we were guided, if I could say that, by some internal guide. There are no books on it.
Because it's a kind of a natural thing. So
And in fact, we've forgotten how to do it. It just dropped off the planet just 3,000 years ago, but we carried in our genes, just like the ability to pray. Nobody has to teach you how to pray. You hear somebody pray if you're religious or spiritual, and you'll pray. You go to the right center of your being. Poems are very close to that, but they're not addressed to a particular God. They're to some listener, you know. But that's the thing, is to just teach people how to get to that point, that everything takes care of itself after that. And we can leave.
And you talk about we. So will you talk about your partner?
Yes, Scylla Liscombe is the person who, in fact, without her, this wouldn't have happened, because she was the one who opened the door finally to just let it happen. And that was by perseverance and courage. It's very scary to do oral poetry the first time, because you just go to your unconscious and let go. But she kept insisting we could do it, and do it, and let's do it, and kept doing it like she's a dog like that, you know. And so what happened is we eventually made the breakthrough. Once we made the breakthrough, it was all downhill after that. But that first breakthrough was tough, and she was responsible for it.
I'm going to ask you more about that right after our next commercial break. And we are back. I'm Patricia Caswell, Director of the Arts Council, with Justin Spring from Soul Speak. And we were just talking before the break about your breakthrough from being a written poem, doing poetry in a written form, to breaking out and understanding that there was something different. Can you tell me about that experience exactly? Yeah,
you know, back, if you can remember, about 10 years ago, we started a lot of cabarets. We had them in St. Ormond's Circle. We brought together singers and dancers and actors, and in fact, we would memorize our poems, or we would read them and we'd perform them, and we were always dissatisfied with it because it was secondhand. You know, when you're reading something, you're not really speaking to somebody. You're kind of speaking at them. You're not paying attention. You're paying attention to what's in your head, basically.
Or how you're coming across, not actually building it, creating it.
Right, it's not happening in front of you. Now, that bothered me. In fact, it bothers all poets, but in fact, most of them just disregard it and say that's just, well, that's too bad. But I wanted to learn how to make poems by speaking them spontaneously, and my partner, Scylla Liscombe, who is in this last video you'll see in terms of her voice as the lead poet, she and she was really the moving force behind it. I wanted to do it, but I wanted to give up. It took us about 2 years to make the breakthrough, because there's no books. You can't read books. Nobody knows how to do it. It's an old, ancient art. But after 2 years, she kept pushing me, come on, we can do it, and we finally made the breakthrough. It was all downhill after that. So we were able now to just make poems on a dime. Just basically, we can get a picture or words, or somebody will say something, or it'll just come to us. We speak it right out. In fact, the poems you hear on these videos are all done spontaneously. They're done in real time. We look at the pictures, and out come the poems, like that. There's no pre-thought to it. It comes directly from the unconscious. So that change, in fact, allowed us to start to work with everybody, because we found out after 3 or 4 years that we weren't that special, that this poetry could be done by anybody. Because over those 3 or 4 years...
That's something to admit. We're not that special.
Right, exactly, because that's what you've been taught as a written poet. There's a certain class of people called poets, okay?
Right.
Okay? But in fact...
the elite.
Right, the elite, whatever you want to call it, but it's separate. But in fact, poetry is a human activity, like praying or like telling jokes. We've just forgotten how to do it. This form, which is the oral form, which comes directly from the unconscious, can be done by anybody. So we put thousands of people through it. You know, we're working with those young moms that we spoke about, working at hospice.
I also wanted to ask you, tell our viewers that you are the recipient of a John Ringling Award that the Arts Council gives. I was very happy. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't get to vote, unfortunately. I direct the Arts Council. I don't get to vote. But that is an award of $5,000 to exceptional artists, any art form in Sarasota County, and you are one of the 2 winners. The other is playwright Jack Gilhooly. It's quite an honor.
Well, I thought so. In fact, when I put it in, I said, I don't have a chance of a snowball, because it was such... These poems are so unusual. See that, you know, but in fact, that the video form was more accessible than the written form that, in fact, I would have submitted. People get the multi-voice Soul Speak poem when there's something to look at, which is also related to it.
And then you also got a grant, because the Arts Council has 4 grant programs. You also got a grant for a program that you're doing with at-risk kids.
Yes, we have a program now called Soul Mask, which is an extension of Soul Speak, where kids make masks of themselves and then speak as the mask. It's really almost an exact counterpart of the ancient tribal poetry, where people would paint their faces and speak as those particular animal faces, what happens to be. So you get your poetry, you get creation, you get performance, you get
Art?
painting,
Yeah.
visual art. They're all done at once by the child from the interior space of the child. No art teachers required.
So what age group do you do at-risk kids?
You can start them at about the 4th grade. And in fact, we're working at Wings Academy with the grant that we got, and we're going to supply them with an entire arts program, which in turn will teach the teachers, just like the kids will learn
And
it.
Wings is what, middle school?
Wings is a middle school over
That's
in
tough
Newtown.
age.
Right, and the kids need an arts program, you know. So this supplies it to them. It's something they can reproduce themselves and continue. You don't need us after a while once we teach you the
Yeah,
techniques.
That's
right?
great. Very giving, very generous to give your art form away the way that you do.
Yeah.
I want to remind our viewers that we have a video coming up, but this program is brought to you by the Sarasota County Arts Council. You can become a member of the Sarasota County Arts Council by calling 365-5118 and asking how to become a member. And someone there will be glad to help you to do that. And you can help to support all of these wonderful things we have in Sarasota, including Soul Speak, by becoming a member of the Arts Council. Now, lead us into our final video.
Sometimes in my dreams,
Sometimes in my dreams,
I'm standing by the windowsill.
I'm standing by the windowsill.
The harbor is filled with light.
You can't see me,
I feel like Vermeer,
but I'm telling you
seeing things for the first time
that I'm really here,
in that special way.
and I see you.
All those little lemons on the sill, propped up, just like that,
But I can't touch you.
like little suns,
Just kind of.
made fragile by the light.
Like you feel someone's passing you,
Only love could bring a light like that.
but no one's there.
Only love.
It's me.
Isn't that right,
It's really me.
Mr. Vermeer?